Today's topic is fairy tales. Metal as fuck, more brutal, bloody, and cruel than any old school death metal record out there, gorier than any great B movie. I've always loved fairy tales since I was a little kid. I'm obsessed to the current day. I love fairy tales. And I love movie adaptations of fairy tales. Not like, ooh, she's the princess. No, I love the stories. When I was a baby, I was constantly listening to a tape that I got for Christmas, filled with fairy tales. When I was 3, able to read a little bit here and there, I was hooked with a small collection of books that included things like Aladdin or The Smoke Rat. I remember a horrendous pair of leggings that I had when I was 4, light bluish green, with Ariel printed all over. The sense of fashion in '94 was something else, let me tell you. Not only the Disney versions, I was aware that the tales came from somewhere else, and I had access to different versions. A little bit later, I discovered the truth about the original fairy tales, and here I am, still obsessed. Fairy tales were cruel as fuck, and some of them have the most crazy and aggressive situations ever described on a narration, sold as lessons. Fairy tales were cruel as fuck. Some of them with the most crazy and aggressive situations ever described in a narration, sold as lessons for children, which I guess is a fancy way of saying we are gonna traumatize those motherfuckers so they enter a catatonic state and never again move for good or bad. I guess that in the current day, most people know that the fairy tales have no happy endings. It's been like a popular standard thing right now, I think. I want to believe so. But back then, when I was a kid in the 90s, there was no access to memes, to ruin the sanity, get you out of your safe illusion that Disney created for you. No, 90s kid, again, we had other ways to find out, like it happened to me, and I will talk about later. Going back to the topic, movies about fairy tales. Well, the world is quite upset right now, for quite some years, because certain major company has been doing some live actions that include questionable choices of the development of those visual documents. When I was a kid, I basically lived in the school library. I had access to some obscure jewels that for some reason were there. One of them was a fairy tale book that shocked my young brain. It had hundreds and hundreds. It was ick. It had hundreds and hundreds of fairy tales that I never heard before. And most of them were the fucking same. They were the fucking same story. For example, there were many stories telling, a young girl oppressed by the stepmother, blah, 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 and a prince falling in love and being the getaway for the escape, changing her life. Those fairy tales were narrated in a very old school way, which means that the happy endings were not there. It was not a thing. The most cruel and random shit will happen on all of them. To the characters, some were magic horses suffering. The fairy tales, again, were the fucking same, but they had so many creative ways of destroying the life of the characters to make it different. I wish I could find that book again, but I don't remember anything except the trauma. When I was a kid, going back to it, my mom was telling me fairy tales, and I was demanding for more. I could not have enough. So it happens that she's a writer, so she was making up stories in a moment with the characters. So let me know. Red Riding Hood was an excellent biker. It's not like I was close-minded, and I've never been, into changing the plot of fairy tales. I love them. For example, Snow White, the original story, has nothing to do with the animated movie that Disney started their career with. Perrault, the author, was a twisted motherfucker that described some very grim, pun intended, things happening around. So basically, in comparison, the Disney adaptations are new ones. I'm okay with that, okay? Because the narration works. That's the only thing that I'm asking for. The storytelling is great. That's what I care about. I've seen so many movies, some very well-known, some super obscure, television films, you name it. It's impossible to remember all of them. Some were great, some were pure crap. way worse than anything that can be released these days, okay? That says a lot. But I'm gonna do my best selecting some titles of the ones that I've enjoyed the most of some popular fairy tales. Because the video is going to be long as fuck, I probably will divide it in 2 or more parts and go just a selection of fairy tales on this one. Most are done with human actors, but there are some that are animated ones. We can skip talking about the plots because I guess we all know the general stories. There's magic extra details, there's changes here and there with adaptation. There are adaptations, but the basic storyline is there for the most part. Starting with The Little Mermaid. My favorite adaptation is a Russian one from 1976. Of course, it's a movie from the 70s, so expect different type of acting, environment, but I personally love the atmosphere of the 70s. Because they kind of reinvented their own aesthetic of medieval experience. And especially since this is a Russian one, they have their own view and they offer a different insight. That feels very fresh, let's say. It's very different, but very familiar, keeping most of the main elements of the original story. The prince is a fucking asshole, by the way. Except being a very attractive man, he has nothing charming. He's an asshole, that's it. His role is being an asshole. In reality, all characters are assholes. Except in contrast with the vagabond that serves as a comic relief and is the only good soul around. But it's a movie that I totally recommend. On to the next one. The first Little Mermaid adaptation that I saw traumatized me for life. Because it was not the Disney one. I wanted to see that one, okay? I was born in 1990. The adaptation was everywhere. Like I was mentioning, I had a pair of leggings with Ariel. Even before watching the movie, my mom was dressing me as a poser. And I have no shame on that. I didn't see the movie yet. True. I was mesmerized by mermaids. Yeah, more pants. But anyway, my parents arrived home with one VHS tape one day. And my brother and I jumped, yay! Then we saw the title. It said The Little Mermaid. And we went, yay! Even crazier. The artwork was a little bit weird, but we were very little and we were not that suspicious, I guess. But still, like, what is going on here? It's not what we thought that The Little Mermaid should look like. They didn't. That didn't look like my leggings, okay? But we were excited. We put it on the VHS player, and the movie started with a very nice Japanese song. The animation is not the best. It was looking kind of weird. But yay! Mermaids. And then a deformed dolphin fish mutant creature following the mermaids. It was ugly as fuck, honestly. Who cares? Mermaids! Ah! You know how the story goes. Mermaid sees prince. Prince almost drowns. Mermaid rescues prince. She falls in love, goes to the witch and asks for legs. And the witch has some conditions. Like, if you don't end up with him, I'm gonna take your life. The story goes on. The mermaid has legs. Hits on the prince. The prince is showing interest. It seems that they are going to end up together, but the prince says, I'm gonna marry another girl. The mermaid is attending to the wedding on the ship. They get married. And the day passes by and the witch is like, I'm gonna claim what is mine, your life, because you didn't end up with him. So her sisters, amount of sisters, appear to try to save the Little Mermaid, saying, hey, we made a deal with the witch. We sold our mermaid hair in exchange of this dagger that you need to put through the heart of the guy that you are in love with. So his blood touches your feet, and the feet grow again a tail. Because you're a mermaid, but not now. So with the dagger, she goes into his chamber. The prince is sleeping with his new wife, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna kill you. But he breathes in a cute way, and she's like, oh no, you're cute. Cannot do it. Her soul breaks into pieces. But she's like, okay, maybe I can. But she can't. So she's ready to die, and she becomes foam. And she says one line that cracks me up to this day. It's wonderful when you are loved, but to love yourself is an equal great happiness. Girl, you don't love yourself. You don't love yourself. You're dying. She dies. She turns into bubbles. And then the prince, who saw everything, by the way, the prince saw everything, remembers that she was the one that saved him in that moment, about time. And you hear the fucking deformed dolphin from the beginning screaming her name in agony because her friend is dead. Because of the stupid guy that barely knew. My brother and I put the tape, ready to watch a masterpiece. What we thought it would be a super lovely story, okay, with a happy ending. The movie ended, and a very young version of myself got pissed. I took the tape, with a frown on my forehead, of course, handed it to my mother, and said, "This is not the Little Mermaid, and I don't want to see it ever again." She kindly explained that not all stories have happy endings, and I still, with my frown on, put it to the bottom of the giant truck, where we kept all the VHS tapes, and it's been there since then. It's available on YouTube. That's where I watched it again to make this video, and I'm still mad to this day. But you know what? Being fair is a nice adaptation, and that's why I'm recommending it. I spoiled it for you, but fuck it. Nerding a bit more, those two adaptations plus one adaptation from Czech Republic from 1976 were the main source of inspiration for the Disney one. And, well, saying inspiration, we all know what it means. They ripped off exactly the text, and I'm showing images here. I leave down below, by the way, a playlist with a bunch of adaptations for this fairy tale available on YouTube. Check it out if you are into it. Rapunzel! One day, a girl from my village, who by the way looks a lot like Mia Goth and is the very same spawn of Satan and happens to share some bloodline with me, came to my house and said, "Hey, my mom says that this is your birthday present." And she left. And I had a new VHS tape. I looked at the artwork and I was amazed. It was a freaking tower. The logo was so freaking cool. The style of drawing, the color palette, that Rapunzel was so beautiful. I loved it. I didn't know the story of Rapunzel before. In my adulthood, it took years and years to find that version again. Because while I keep the VHS tape, those are in my home village house. And I don't have access to it since I live abroad. But I found it on YouTube as well. It's a series of tales called Timeless Tales by Hanna-Barbera, which of course I binge watched. And this is the only one worth it. That's why I guess I put it on the first volume, because the rest... The tape starts with none other than Olivia Newton-John doing the introduction, and I love the atmosphere, the storytelling, the music, the witch's hair, that outfit. Come on, that woman had nothing to envy Rapunzel with that hair. This one was one of my favorite movies that I owned as a child of animated movies. On the other side of the spectrum, we have an adaptation that is as cringy as magical. I guess it's pure B material. Shelley Duvall, yeah, the very same from The Shining, did a series called Fairy Tales Theater that I honestly don't know if anyone reminds except me. Because I assume that the trauma was so powerful that it has erased the memories from everyone, out of their brains, because, yeah, it's bad. Since mine is fucked up already, I guess that's why I remember. Not only she introduces the fairy tales, which is not comparable with the charm and sweetness of Olivia Newton-John, but she also plays the characters. And in this case, the Rapunzel adaptation, she plays the main character. It's weird, it's awkward, it's bizarre, bizarre is the word, I guess. I have some strong guts, honestly. But holy shit. Links are in the description, polluting YouTube with this atrocity, and also the Hanna-Barbera version as well. So, yeah, to contrast one. I recommend both of them, okay, but one is the sweet animated version and the other one is very V-movie. Well, if you're into sword and sorcery movies, that type of fantasy, dark fantasy from the 80s, 70s, 90s, this could fit that way, because it's charming in its own way. I love it, but it's cringy. Pinocchio, tomato, I don't know how to pronounce it. This one I discovered in a very random way during the pandemic, as it happened. And I freaking love it. It's fucking dark, it's twisted, very magical. This is a movie that if you tell me that it was directed by Tim Burton, I will blindly believe it. Not like the fucking shits that he did with Alice in Wonderland and Dumbo. I'm talking about the Italian adaptation from 2019, and the critiques that you may see online are honestly pretty bad, but just for one reason, because this movie is not for children, and they took it as a children's movie. But a surprise, as I was saying, fairy tales are cruel as fuck, and they narrate horrible things. For this one, I was not familiar with the original source, the book, and I just knew the basic storyline, the Disney type of storytelling. And some scenes really got me, At least I did love the Italian movie, and I was delighted to see some well-known names like Roberto Benigni on screen. The only problem that I can find is that the wood effect on Pinocchio's is a bit stiff. No, seriously, I mean that is not going to age well in comparison with the amazing effects wardrobe image of the movie, because the effects are fantastic, but the most crucial part, which was the wood skin, is not looking great. On the other hand, talking about Roberto Benigni, he was a great addition to this one. And I want to believe that it was some sort of redemption from the movie of 2002, where he directed the movie and put himself as the wooden puppet child. I don't know what the hell was on his mind. That one I do not recommend, but the one from 2019, Snow White, A Tale of Terror from 1997. And they did spoil everything with the title indeed. I think this one should be pretty well known because Sigourney Weaver was the evil queen and Sam Neill was the father of Snow White, whom is never called Snow White in the movie. She's referred as Liliana, and is indeed a tale of terror, like I was saying. 2 minutes into the movie, and we already have the gruesome death of a pregnant woman that gets a glass or whatever the shit that is onto her chest while traveling on a caravan or a chariot, and his husband has to, finish the business to save the baby. We see blood on the snow, metaphors, poetry, violence. Sigourney Weaver fucking nails it. The character doesn't start as an evil motherfucker. She loves the stupid man. She's well-intended. It's a fucking kid that starts acting like a fucking brat and being mean to her. What the fuck? She gave you a cute puppy! You get to see the woman going insane because the twat of her new husband doesn't care about her and can't fucking move on about the dead mother/wife. Also because an evil mirror is possessing her. But she was a good person at the beginning of the movie. Her characterization, whatever, as the witch, the makeup is fucking incredible. Beautiful images, beautiful music, amazing scenarios, the wardrobe, fucked up story. Unlike the 2012 adaptation movie, which sucks, it just sucks. Not worth saying anything more. I kind of like it, but yeah. On the other hand, do I love low-budget teleseries from the 90s with questionable cast and even more questionable performances with a fantasy premise? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I declare publicly my love for that niche. The world needs more of that. However, that's my reason to not label it as not recommended. I'm talking about the 2001 adaptation with Kristen Krug from Smallville, It Was the Time, as Snow White, and Miranda Richardson as the Evil Queen. Both are perfect on their roles, and there's no doubt. The acting, meh. But it's here on the list. You judge if you want to see it. I was thinking, as I was saying, about recommending other fairy tales, but this is already a very, very long video and I have to eat an amazing dinner. So maybe a part 2 if you enjoy this. Do you agree? What other fairy tales do you want to hear about? Because there is so many and I have so many movies in my pocket to talk about. Bye.